we are. And I hope, Mike Silver, man, we love you, but I also hope you're honored. This right here will be the first 10-minute stretch since Carlos Correa became a Met where we are not screaming and yelling about Carlos Correa and the San Francisco Giants. How does that make you feel, Mike Silver?
I definitely feel honored, and I did somehow get drawn into it a little on social media yesterday, which is ridiculous because I don't follow baseball very closely. And back before I took the Chronicle job and was able to just be a fan since I don't cover baseball, I've been an A's fan in my past. So try telling someone who's followed the A's closely that, oh, no, we didn't get to pay this guy $350 million. But I would say this, if a team really believes the guy is an injury risk, if that's real, then you probably don't want to commit $350, but we'll see how it all plays out. I think Giants fans are understandably frustrated.
Yeah, I will say this about it, and this was one of the 28 thoughts that went through my head on the first couple hours of the Correa News. Mike Silver, San Francisco Chronicle, joining us as he always does here on 95.7 The Game. One of my thoughts was, if you had told me 3 months ago the Giants offseason would be a massive bust, the Warriors are going to be under 500, but thank God we've got Brock Purdy. I mean, my head would have exploded. Like, this is the most ridiculous 3 months I've ever watched unfold.
Hey, a lot's going on right now. Cal basketball is on a run that will surely end in the Final Four. I don't know if you guys saw, my Bears were taking over.
Did you see what USF did to ASU last night? How about that?
I haven't followed a lot of college basketball this year. It's been a rough stretch.
I hear you. But anyway, that's sort of where we're at, and I think he's answered all the questions that we've asked so far. But can Brock Purdy handle this? He's kind of like he's the guy now for the whole city is on his back.
Well, you know how these things go, right? So he passed a big test on Thursday. That was, on the road, loud stadium, team fighting for its playoff life, and he was hurt. So passed a lot of tests, really. There will be another test at some point, presumably, and that will be, hey, we're behind at the end. We need you to drive us down the field and make some throws and win this game for us. Or just being behind in general. And, he will probably ultimately be judged by the same standard that Jimmy Garoppolo was judged. And Jimmy Garoppolo has had great stretches, including this season, where it all looks good. But heaven forbid he throw an interception late or not be able to drive the team down, in a Montana-esque, Mahomes-esque fashion. And, we've seen what happens. So maybe Mr. Purdy, because he's young and because it's fairy tale, will get kid gloves. But I would imagine that if they're down 14 to the Commanders and he's not able to bring them back into that game, that all of a sudden people will say, well, is he a front runner? And look, they're good enough, this 49er team, that we may not find that out until the playoffs or the Super Bowl or even next year. But at some point, that's a big test.
You were on our show a while back, and you said that the one thing the 49ers can't do at quarterback next season is go in with Trey Lance as option A, and that's the only option, and that they might bring in like a veteran to either back him up or compete with him. Is Brock Purdy playing well enough, or have we seen enough to think that he could be that second option alongside Trey Lance where they wouldn't have to go make a significant investment at quarterback?
Well, he might be that first option. So, yeah, obviously it's for Kyle to answer, but I would say this. You could definitely, I think, if Brock Purdy continues to, he doesn't have to be, he can have bumps, but if Brock Purdy still looks the part, I think you could definitely have a scenario where you go into next season with Brock Purdy and Trey Lance as your two guys, and they're both under rookie contracts. You don't have, there's no pressure. You can just roll out the ball and let them compete in training camp. I believe that based on what we've seen so far, Brock Purdy would be a heavy favorite. but you never know. I also think there's a scenario where there's a bridge quarterback and you keep one or both of the other two. I mean, they're definitely keeping Brock Purdy. He's in year one of the cheapest rookie deal ever, and I would assume they're keeping Trey Lance too. But if Tom Brady, for example, which we talked about, wanted to come for a year or whatever, you might think about that again, depending upon how giddy they are about Brock Purdy by the time this is all said and done. But I do think it changes that scenario where you talk about a veteran like a Matt Ryan or somebody else. I think they probably feel good enough about Purdy that the Purdy Lance only scenario is much more prominent.
Mike Silver with us here, 95.7 The Game. Speaking of the Lance stuff, I saw a quote attributed to you yesterday that essentially said you thought that Trey Lance was being run inside a lot because he can't run outside, maybe the way that Kyle Shanahan and the 49ers were hoping he would be able to. It was one of the first, I know we still don't fully know who Trey Lance is going to be. It was one of the first things I saw someone say that would suggest an admission by the 49ers that they maybe didn't get quite what they thought they were getting with Trey Lance. Is that fair?
Well, I was talking with Colin Cowherd on his podcast, The Volume, and we got into that. And, a lot of fans have been up in arms, especially after he got hurt. Like, why do they keep running him inside? And I do think there is an element of, hey, he's not exactly racing around the edge. And, some quarterbacks can do that. Josh Allen can get there. Obviously, Lamar can. Justin Fields can. And I've heard it suggested to me that maybe when you look at him running circles around, who can I insult? The UC Davises of the world. Sorry, Aggies. I love. I love Davis, and I love the Aggies. But
fingers up.
When you're running around people at a lower level of competition, it may not be the same as watching Justin Fields on tape, let alone translating to the NFL. So. There's a lot to really like about Trey Lance. I want to remind people, like, the intelligence jumped out at them and still does. Obviously, they love his makeup as a person, and that deep ball was going to be a real thing had he stayed healthy. I believe it would have changed that offense and given them, some downfield options. The real problem was the accuracy and the consistency. He was not consistently accurate. I reported that over the offseason. People saw it with their own eyes over training camp and in the preseason and early in the season. It doesn't mean it's an insurmountable thing, but, look, if you trade 3-1s for a guy and it doesn't work out in the NFL, you're almost certainly fired, and your franchise is set back years under normal conditions. You trade 3-1s and take a guy at 3. They might get away with it, and I'm not saying Trey Lance won't be good, but if he isn't, they still might get away with it because the guy they took at 262 may be good. So we've still got a long way to go, but it is a remarkable story and a testament to the overall roster they've built.
So is there a chance that let's say Trey Lance and Brock Purdy have a competition next year, Trey Lance wins the competition, he's a starter week 1. Do you think that maybe we'll see a different version of the 49ers offense? Like, Kyle Shanahan's kind of rethinking how he can use Trey Lance effectively, knowing that, okay, he doesn't maybe have the speed that they thought he did?
Yeah, I think Kyle will always try to scheme it up, to his players' strengths, and he's great at that. I think he already had seemed to concede that, that speed on the edge wasn't going to be a hallmark of what they were doing with Trey Lance. And Kyle loves to run the boots and get the quarterback on the move. So I'm not saying you can't do that. I'm just saying they needed to have a quarterback running threat. I felt like as Trey was figuring it out, the threat wasn't going to be to the outside, so they were trying to manufacture one to the inside. This is my very amateurish way of assessing it. It's obviously much more intricate than that. But I would say this, the way they are constructed currently as an offense was based around Jimmy's strengths. Getting the ball out very quickly and accurately into tight spaces so that those guys can run with the ball after the catch. Kittle, Ayuk, Debo. That's kind of how they were built. McCaffrey gives you another dimension because he's so versatile, as is Debo, et cetera, et cetera. So Trey Lance was not fitting into that offense. He was not seeing it and getting rid of it quickly and accurately in those tight windows that Jimmy was. Again, very intelligent guy, can develop, can do some other things well. But I think you had a team that was constructed around Jimmy's strengths, and it wasn't necessarily translating to Trey's. And, a guy like Danny Gray, who they drafted to take the top off the defense, who we've barely seen, theoretically could have thrived in whatever the offense would have been with Trey.
Mike, we've been down this road before last year, all kinds of differences this year, but I think still hard to predict. So I'll ask you, now that Jimmy Garoppolo has another injury situation and it will take him into the offseason, what do you think his market looks like?
I think it's good, man. I think this is a big win for Jimmy. And, it bummed me out when he got hurt, obviously, because it's been such a cool story, an unlikely story, and he's played really, really well. I wrote right before that injury that he's playing at Pro Bowl level, and I'll stand by that because Kirk Cousins made it. I feel like that one of those NFC spots was there for the taking if Jimmy had kept it rolling. And in a way, it ends well for him financially because he did enough, I think, that he showed other teams like, oh, his shoulder's good. He's playing at a really high level. We like this guy. We can win with this guy. He didn't have to go through a playoff and maybe have another moment where, oh, God, he threw an interception in Philadelphia and that doomed them where people overreacted. Yes, his team is thriving without him, but they're a very, very good team. So I think Jimmy, the only silver lining for him, and it's a very thin one, is I think he positioned himself well for next year. I do not think he'll be back with the Niners, but I think he will be a starter somewhere, and I think it will be a competitive market for his services.
So that was going to be the next question I was going to ask. Has the door kind of, I don't never say never, but has the door mostly closed on him returning?
Well, the door closed when they traded 3 ones to draft Trey Lance. And it closed more when after Jimmy played hurt and got them to the precipice of a Super Bowl, they told him, hey, it's Trey Lance's team. And it closed even more when they had him throwing on the field as a sideshow during training camp. And then it kind of opened back up just a little bit in their mind when he was out there bawling and leading them, to the point where they were able to clinch a division in mid-December. But I think if you're Jimmy, you're not exactly like, man, I'm going to do anything to come back here. Right. Again, it's all good. Like, it's been a great story, but if I'm Jimmy, I'm trying to get out too and go somewhere where they believe in me as the guy.
Mike, great stuff as always. Happy holidays to you. Enjoy this weekend, and we're out of here next week. So we'll talk to you in the new year.
Awesome. It'll be great. And there will be hopefully a new giant free agent signee we can get into by then.
Very, very exciting. They are combing AA teams all over the nation to see who they would like to acquire.
Hey, try walking a mile in the A's shoes.
Man.
I'm doing it. I'm doing it right now. I feel like I've walked at least a half mile in the last 24 hours.
Well, the A's have done it for 20 years.
Yeah, I know. That scab is getting pulled all over the place. All right. Thanks, Mike.
Appreciate you, Mike.
You guys, thanks.